Okay, I finished it. The hardest video I'm probably ever going to make for his channel. 70 minutes of me having fun with the OJ storyline. Now, let's go for something easier, like why Alicianrone hasn't been released yet. Okay, this is going to be harder than I thought. How about I try something I can actually make? Like, how about that weird Reploid translation of Sora? Yeah, that'll do. Alright, let's do this. It's Alicianrone time. Welcome. This is Silent Crane here to finally put an answer to the question of when Alicianrone will be released, why it's still in development after all these years, and just overall be the go-to video for any Alicianrone related questions. This is my second script covering this topic. The first one had me write the script as I was going through every official source I could find while making it. Because of this, the script had so many revisions with multiple answers to the question that I decided to just wait a bit before I was ready to tackle the subject. Yes, I realize the irony of delaying a video covering a game that's been nothing but delays. Now then, Alicianrone. As of 2026, it has been over 10 years without a new individual installment to the franchise. Everything we have received has either been an update to 100% Orange Juice or Acceleration of Security 2, most notably the former. The only hope we have for a new installment is Orange Juice's only game in development, Alicianrone. It was meant to be the finale to a trilogy of games beginning with Acceleration of Security 2, transitioning into 200% Mixed Juice, and ending with Alicianrone. That's not even me theorizing, that's straight from Orange Juice themselves. Personally, I like to call this collection of games the Alicianrone trilogy. In the midst of this triad comes the releases of 2 more games in the franchise, QP Shooting Dangerous and Xmas Shooting Scramble, the latter being the last game Orange Juice ever released. So, Alicianrone has been in development for over 10 years. Crazy, right? But it doesn't stop there. You want an exact number on how long it's been since this game was conceptualized? It started development in 2013 and was first announced in November 2011. That's right, the idea for this game has been around for over 15 years. While to most OJ fans, this revelation isn't that important, since the content of the other games is sparsely brought up in comparison to 100% Orange Juice. Most people see the game as the answer to the question of what happens when you run out of existing OJ characters to put in the game. But for those following the trilogy storyline, we're left on a cliffhanger for 200% Mixed Juice with Sumika telling Saguri about how they plan to live in the world of Alicianrone. To clarify, the trilogy centers around 2 immortal beings, Saguri and Sumika, with a looming question of how they will handle evacuating the planet after Earth dies, and the answer to that is to have the 2 relocate to another planet, with the story of Alicianrone delivering a conclusion to the story arc. But that hasn't happened yet, and we're still stuck at the cliffhanger at the end of Mixed Juice. Yeah, we do get the Old Guardians campaign in 100% Orange Juice that says they're fine and have successfully made it to the world of Alicianrone, but that doesn't tell us anything about what happened once they got there, and most of the dialogue between the 2 is just reminiscing about the other 2 games that were already released. Oh, and that's not getting into the fact that in both the Old Guardians and Girl Power campaigns, 100% Orange Juice is a real board game in the world of Alicianrone. This causes so many questions that it's put the narrative of the entire franchise wide open. Congratulations, Alicianrone! You've awakened a chronologically confused nerd, and your punishment is me dissecting your entire existence. Just a short disclaimer. While I'm about to cover the development of Alicianrone through any official material I can find, I'm not going to go into the individual lives of any of the members of Orange Juice. Everything is going to cover the development of the game just by going through Hono's tweets, interviews, and the Circle's blog posts. With that said, let's go over the 15-year development cycle of a game that's somehow still ongoing. So, the way the Circle Orange Juice works is that it comprises of 3 people. Hono, the artist and director of every game in the franchise aside from Flying Red Barrel. Junpyeon, who's the developer of every game and the one behind everything regarding Flying Red Barrel. And lastly, there's Deku, a freelance composer provided by the Japanese publisher of every Orange Juice game, Shindenken. Deku worked on the soundtrack for Saguri, Sora, both Acceleration and Saguri games, a few songs in 100% Orange Juice, and was meant to compose music for Alicianrone. Every other song you hear in the franchise is public domain from websites that specialize in that niche, like Cyber Rainforest and Dova Syndrome. So to recap, The creative lead and artist for Alicianrone is Hono, the developer for the game is Junpyeon, and the one in charge of the game's soundtrack is Deku. As said before, Alicianrone was announced in November 2011. However, Hono conceived the idea for the game on April 8, 2011, 4 months before Acceleration of Saguri 2 was released. While creating the story for Acceleration of Saguri 2, Hono seemed to have a strange interest in Saguri's father, Yukito. He found the father-daughter relationship between the two very fascinating, to where he drew artwork of them shortly after the release of AOS 2. This gave Hono the idea of making a game based on that kind of relationship. The daughter character obviously was meant to be Alicianrone, but the father character is, as of the time of this writing, the last non-flying red barrel character not introduced into 100% orange juice, Thiru. No, he was not some guy I made up for my OJ lore video. He's an actual character Hono created. On November 7th, 2011, an announcement was made on Orange's blog which features the silhouettes of Alicianrone and Thiru, with Hono making tweets about the game starting January of 2012. While the Circle makes a game almost every year for Comic Cat, Hono made an announcement that the game released that year wasn't going to be Alicianrone, but a remake of the original QP shooting called QP Shooting Dangerous. For most of 2012, most of Hono's tweets have been about QP Shooting Dangerous, but there were a few tweets brainstorming ideas for Alicianrone. First is the dirt character announced for the game, Miyazaki. She was based on Sham's scrap character design, but Hono liked it so much that he repurposed it for this game. Next is the setting. While nothing was announced about what it was, he did say he liked it just as much as the setting for Saguri. Lastly, less than 2 weeks before QP Shooting Dangerous was released, Hono goes on a long speech about how Saguri 3 would turn out. And what we got was, no joke, spoilers for the end of 200% mixed juice. 2 years before the game was even made. The setting for Saguri 3 would take place in space, billions of years after the destruction of planet Earth. Accompanying Saguri is the only thing capable of surviving billions of years, Sumika, who, underneath all that ego, has something known as a mechanism, which was later revealed to be her simulations. 200% Mixed Juice was released on August 7th, 2014, meaning 2013 had nothing new for the franchise aside from an April Fool's joke game. The reason for this is that the Circle was working on 2 different games at the same time, and considering one of the games was an RPG featuring every character in the franchise so far, it's understandable. However, one notable thing Hono tweeted was this gif, stating he wanted Alicianrone to have an attack animation like this. Keep that in mind for later. 2014 was a big year for the franchise. It was its 10-year anniversary after all, but more important than anything was what happened on May 16th. The Steam release of 100% Orange Juice was published. It sold so well that a month later, Hono thanked his overseas fanbase, and on the same day, he announced that Alicianrone is now a high-speed strip mahjong player. You're getting the filtered version of these tweets, by the way. Most of Hono's Twitter feed is nonsense like this. After Comic Cat 86 passed with the release of 200% Mixed Juice, the Circle's undivided attention was back to Alicianrone. At least that's how it would have been, had they not wanted to capitalize on 100% Orange's success by adding content regularly. Hono believed in OJ's success so deeply that he believed there will be at least 50 DLC characters by the time the game falls into obscurity. Needless to say, that's an understatement. 2015 was the year where the last individual installment of the franchise, X-Men Shooting Scramble, was released. Hono said nothing at all regarding that game, but he did make an announcement about Alicianrone so big that it shook the game to its core. And by that, I mean the core of the game is gone. They had to redesign the direction of the game from what they had originally envisioned. I don't know what going from vertical to horizontal means, but I'm pretty sure it can't be good for development. And by the end of 2015, 100% Orange Juice was so successful that Hono questions if it would get an anime adaptation. 2016 had low information regarding the game, but there was one interesting tweet from Hono in May, where he shows off a picture of Sumika, who closely resembles how she looks in her future appearance in 100% Orange Juice with the text, Final Boss. It could be referring to her status as the final boss of both Acceleration Saguri 2 and 200% Mixed Juice, but I like to think it's referring to her being the final boss of Alicianrone as well. 2017 was Alicianrone's year. We got a lot of information regarding the game not just from Hono's tweets, but from interviews found on Fruitback Factory's YouTube channel. First is the reveal of the 4th Alicianrone character, Teo Terada, in both her early concept art and her final design. Later that year, we got actual sprite work for the characters, including a sprite of the 5th Alicianrone character, K.R. Repark. Her inclusion is notable since shortly after she was revealed, both her and Miyazaki were added as DLC to 100% Orange Juice. Not as a character pack like the others, but as an expansion to the game with their own campaign, giving fans a preview of what's to come in Alicianrone. And with this, 2017 is the year where development for the game sort of peaked. It's all downhill from here. So, in 2017, Hono announced that he was tired of attending Comic-Cons. Not only that, but it was made clear that during that year, in addition to making progress on Alicianrone, Hono was also concerned about running out of characters for 100% Orange Juice. He thought about making variations of popular characters, but even more concerning is that he wanted to do a collab with a popular anime at the time. And from the looks of it, it wasn't a small cosmetic like the Sakura Miko collab, it was going to be playable units. The anime? Kemono Friends. Now, keep in mind, this was before the franchise's popularity took a nosedive with the dismissal of the original director and its infamous second season. So yeah, it was probably for the best that the owners of Kemono Friends rejected the offer. After thinking about it a bit more, the circle came up with the idea of making characters original to 100% Orange Juice. The first one was revealed on June 4th, 2019, with the main antagonist of OJ's story herself, Mio. She was made in celebration of 1 million downloads of 100% OJ, hence the pun in her name, Mio, the own. God. Before the event that featured Mio was released, Hono was coming up with ideas for characters for a story exclusive to OJ. So, Hono gave out a poll asking his audience what kind of character they would like to see. Choices were an older sister, a small boy, a macho guy, and a brat. The choice for the brat won, with the macho guy coming at a close second. And so, on December 14th, 2019, Mio was released to OJ, and on April 18th, 2020, 100% Orange Juice Season 2 began. But a month before the start of Season 2 was the beginning of an even larger event. 100% Orange Juice, along with 200% Mixed Juice and Acceleration Security 2, were free to own on Steam for a limited time as part of Fruit Bat Factory's stay-at-home campaign. This caused a massive boom of new OJ players discovering the franchise for the first time. With the remake of Flying Rip Barrel and the Alicianrone Tale to Ride character packs released shortly after, it seemed like this was the start of a new beginning for the Orange Juice franchise. Hope for the release of Alicianrone was at an all-time high, but what came afterwards was nothing. All news regarding Alicianrone's progress had ceased. Even worse is that Hono made his final unit art contributions to the game on September 26, 2022, with the release of Pomeranians and Wadi. While he is still the creative mind behind the stories for OJ, it's easy to mistake that Hono isn't involved with the franchise anymore. And with that rumor, it comes with the assumption that his departure is the reason why Alicianrone will never be made. Now that we've gone over the official facts, it's time I present my theory as to what really happened during Alicianrone's development. However, to do this, there is one mystery I need to solve beforehand, one that will be the key to unlocking everything regarding this development cycle, and that unknown factor is this game's genre. Most fans of Orange Juice's works assume that this game is a horizontal high-speed shooter, just like Saguri and Tora. But if that were the case, Alicianrone would easily be released in August 2015 instead of X-Men Shooting Scramble. No. This game had to be a different genre entirely. Don't believe me? Well then, this animation of Alicianrone will say everything. What kind of shoot-'em-up game has an animation where the character falls flat on their back and jumps back up on their feet afterwards? No. What kind of 2D game in general has that animation? Well, there are a few possibilities. While a lot of platformer games have the main character fall on their back, it's usually reserved for a dead animation where they don't get up. Animations like these are made more for the kind of genre where the game wants you to feel the impact of a melee attack, and there's two well-known genres that fulfill those conditions. First is the beat-em-up genre, one where waves of enemies attack the player character who in turn, well, beats him up. Only problem with that genre is that the enemies are usually humanoid characters, which will pose a problem, since the generic enemies in every Orange Juice game are either an animal or machine. And since this game takes place in a forest where all the characters are witches, I don't think the circle will change their stance just to have Alicianrone fight generic witches. So that leaves us with the only other genre that has physical contact as its main focus, the fighting game genre. This is easily the most plausible genre for Alicianrone to be, since Orange Juice has already made fighting games before with the Acceleration Saguri series, only this time, the fighting takes place on the ground. Well, maybe. According to Hono's 2015 tweets, he announced that the game will switch from being vertical based to horizontal based, and there's only one fighting game subgenre that's known for being vertical based, the platformer fighter. Yes, you heard that right. There's a plausible chance Alicianrone started as a platformer fighter like Super Smash Bros. As for its role as a horizontal fighter, I can see it being more of an air-based anime fighter than a 2D fighter. After all, most of the characters are witches. Air is kind of their thing. However, with the answer of Alicianrone being a standard fighting game, we found our answer as to why Alicianrone wasn't released in the first year. Developing a fighting game is hard. Harder than creating a board game, RPG, shoot-'em-up game, beat-'em-up game, you get it. For a genre that features two characters whacking each other until one of their HP bars drop to 0, it shouldn't sound hard, but there are two key factors that make creating a fighting game very difficult. First are the animations. The Acceleration of Saguri series got off easy by having their characters float in midair, not having to animate their characters walking and running. Not to mention fighting game attack animations have much more detail than just characters raising their arms up in the air. It's a lot to do, even for an experienced artist like Hono. This is likely the reason why Zune, the creator of Touhou, turned to other artists to help with animations for his Touhou fighting game spin-offs. Next is Jinpyon's part, the game mechanics and balancing. While the game mechanics aren't that hard to program, balancing everything is where the problem comes in. Both Acceleration and Saguri games have balancing issues. While it's not prevalent in AOS 2 now, upon its first release, it had characters capable of infinite comboing easily. And before the game was released, the characters were so broken that Hono made a tweet talking about how bad the balancing was. Yes, this game's an indie title and not everything has to be perfect upon its initial release, but considering that AOS 2 had tournaments shortly after launch, it gave the circle something to consider. With my theory of what genre this game is, combined with the facts presented, I'm able to create a full-blown timeline of what happened to this game, why it hasn't been cancelled, and if this game could ever be released. On April 2011, Hono, the man behind the Saguri series of the Orange Juice franchise, first imagined a game based on a character called Alicianrone. Its setting would be a world based on existing fairy tales and magic. While thinking about the idea, he found the relationship between two of his existing characters, Saguri and Yukito, fascinating, so he created the characters Alicianrone and Diru. Shortly after the release of Acceleration of Saguri 2 on August 14th, the circle noticed the popularity of the game with competitive fighting game fans. The game was so popular that it had tournaments based around it. This gave them an idea. If the fighting game community liked a bullet hell fighting game hybrid, they'll love a game that's just a straight up platformer fighter. Besides, if Touhou can make a fighting game, so could they. Of course, the game is going to take a lot more effort than your normal Orange Juice game, not to mention that 2014 was coming up, marking the 10th year anniversary of the franchise. They didn't know what game to make for that just yet. Initially, the anniversary game was going to be a remake of Keepy Shooting, but Jinpyon wanted to integrate Flying Red Barrel characters into the game. Hono jokingly told him that they could add Green Frog as one of the bosses in the game, but even then, Jinpyon wanted something more than the shoot-'em-up game as their anniversary project. Despite this, they decided to follow up on that idea of a remake of Keepy Shooting as a quick game to make for Comic Kid in winter 2012. As for Alicianrone, it was still in its brainstorming phase, with its official teaser made back in November 2011. However, Alicianrone wasn't the only game the circle was brainstorming. Hono thought back to the events of Acceleration of Saguri 2 and thought about how a Saguri 3 would play out. It would take place after the end of the Earth, with Saguri and Sumika being the only two people left alive. But they couldn't make an entire game using only those two characters, could they? Shortly after the release of Keepy Shooting Dangerous, development started on Alicianrone and Saguri 3, soon to be known as 200% Mixed Juice. And all of 2013, as well as the first half of 2014, was focused on developing those two games. Since 200% Mixed Juice was going to be their 10th year anniversary game, more effort was put towards that than Alicianrone. Then on June 16th, 2014, the unexpected happened. The new overseas publishers of the Orange Juice games, Fruitbat Factory, released 100% Orange Juice on Steam, and its publicity did the unthinkable and reached mainstream audiences outside of Japan. This game that was released as just another installment in the franchise managed to reach sales figures that dwarf all the other games they've released combined. This didn't affect the team that much initially. Development for 200% Mixed Juice was released as planned, but this popularity did cause the circle to go back and add popular characters that weren't in the game's initial release as DLC character packs. Come April 7th, 2015, and everything we knew about the gameplay for Alicianrone has been scrapped. The game was no longer going to be a platform fighter, but a traditional anime fighter. Now the game wasn't going to have Hono's spin on the platform fighter genre. It was just going to be a generic fighting game with a twist not as impactful as the original concept. The reason for this change is likely due to the success of 100% orange juice overseas. All the effort it took to give this game a following upon release was no longer needed. They didn't even have to rush the game for Comic Cat since the circle stopped attending its conventions by 2017. However, these setbacks didn't stop the team from trying to finish the game. During 2017, a lot of progress was made while experimenting with the 5 fighter characters currently on their roster: Alicianrone, Diru, Teo Terada, Yusaki, and Kea Repark. Confident that the game would be released in 2018 or 2019, the circle added the latter 2 characters as DLC for 100% orange juice. They even had a teaser for the setting of Alicianrone with the map Witch Forest added too. Meanwhile, the circle is finding other ways of adding more characters to OJ, with the fear of running out of characters being a thought on the team's mind in 2017. There was an idea of adding variations of popular characters, but even stranger was that they also looked towards doing collabs with other franchises. It was then that the circle had an idea. Instead of making new games, why not just expand the narrative of 100% orange juice? After all, the setting for OJ is the hub of many different worlds. Why not just create a world and add new original characters to them? And with that, brainstorming for 100% Orange Juice Season 2 was underway. This new era of Orange Juice came at the expense of making progress for Alicianrone. What was once a game meant to revolutionize the Doshin soft fighting game scene was now more of a chore that needed to be taken care of. Even Junpyeon wanted to focus more on making a remake of Flying Red Barrel as more of his own passion project. It was then that the circle got an idea. One final experiment to see how much fans would actually play Alicianrone if it was finished. First off, the Old Gardens expansion for OJ was released. It served to add Saguri 46B and Sumika into the game, but even more important was their scenario. The story was pretty much there to act as a conclusion to the Alicianrone trilogy, in case the experiment fails and the fighting game never gets made. The same goes for the Alicianrone and Teo Terada character pack released months after. Next, with Flying Red Barrel and OJ Season 2 in development, as well as the 2020 lockdowns forcing people to stay at home, the circle gave the okay to have Fruit Bat Factory, for a week, have 100% orange juice, as well as the 2 Alicianrone prequels, free to own. The key thing they wanted to measure was OJ's popularity in proportion to acceleration of Saguri 2. And a month after, Season 2 of 100% Orange Juice began, followed by the release of Flying Red Barrel. This experiment determined the future of the project. In the end, 100% Orange Juice had a massive spike in players, with acceleration of Saguri 2 and 200% Mixed Juice doing well, but not as much as they anticipated. And as usual, the character packs for the 4 Alicianrone characters sold better than Junpyeon's remake of Flying Red Barrel. The results of the experiment caused the circle to stray away from developing individual installments to focus on 100% Orange Juice, and to a newfound extent, their own lives. The other characters planned for Alicianrone were, as a complete guess, repurposed as some of the cast for 100% Orange Juice Season 2. They fit the fairy tale motif the other Alicianrone characters have. After all, mermaids, fairies, demons, they're all fantasy creatures. If that's not enough, in 2012, Hono said he wanted to add a character called Pomeranius into his next work. Something tells me that work wasn't supposed to come almost 10 years after his tweet. As for the fate of the fighting game, it's currently in a perpetual state of being in development, because what's the point of canceling a game? The last time a game was cancelled by them was Scrambled Eve, and even that was realized years later with X-Men Shooting Scramble. Having a game this far in development with its only hindrance being their lack of interest means there's always a chance they can come back later and finish it. And so, the tale of Alicianrone lived maybe ever after. So yeah, that's the full story of Alicianrone's development thus far. Sorry if you came to this video looking for a direct answer like, the game was cancelled the whole time, or Alicianrone 2027. But if that were the case, then this game wouldn't have its status as vaporware now, wouldn't it? As someone in love with everything regarding this franchise, I would want nothing more than actual confirmation that Alicianrone is still being developed. But let's be honest, for an indie circle that made games in very short development cycles, including a board game and an RPG, you'd think they could tackle whatever genre Alicianrone's supposed to be in 2 years, 3 years tops. But we're in year 15, with its last known news being in 2020, 10 years after this game was announced. And considering how infamously high effort Jinpyeong's OJ deck's contributions are compared to Hono's, there's unironically a chance we could get a Flying Red Barrel sequel before Alicianrone's released. What's even stranger than the story behind this game's production is how much the fans really want this game to be made. In the 2025 OJ popularity poll, Alicianrone plays 5th out of all 94 playable characters, meaning that if nothing else, fans would love to play Alicianrone just for the main character herself. It's always sad seeing everyone anticipate the next Root Bat Factory game be Alicianrone, only for them to be mildly disappointed when that isn't the case once the game gets revealed. And then there's me, who knows that the next game won't be Alicianrone, but wants to be proven wrong because I want to see something come from this franchise other than 100% OJ content. Even while making this video, part of me was hoping that it would be dated while making it, because that would mean Alicianrone would be out. But sadly, that isn't the case. All we can do now is wait patiently, and hope that something will motivate the circle to continue working on Alicianrone so that it can one day be released. This is Silent Crane, and I'll see you guys then.